Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Caleb, and about a month ago I uploaded a video called "The Switch Up on Tears of the Kingdom is Insane," it's my most viewed video now. Thank you guys for that. But I do wanted to address a few things, and this is sort of like a sequel, like a follow-up to that video, so here we go. First of all, I understand it was a bit of a rambling mess, and it was one of my first videos back, so I wanted to apologize, I guess. And especially because now I usually have like a notepad up to, give an example of what, have a list of things to say. In that video, I don't think I did that. I was just sort of rambling. So first of all, I apologize for that. But now hopefully it's going to be a little bit better with, because it's a little bit more coherent now, I would say. Even though obviously I'm not a professional or anything, but you get the idea. Anyway, point is, I got a lot of comments in that video. Explaining, a little bit more like why they thought Tears of the Kingdom wasn't as good or whatever. So I'm gonna go over some of the thoughts now, and just get into it. Just talk about what a lot of these people said. So first of all, one of the most prominent things I saw is about recency bias, or the honeymoon phase, as some people like to put it. So basically, I would say that, and I think I did mention this in that video, but I'll mention it here again, or at least maybe a little bit more in depth. Point is, recency bias, yes, is always a factor, and I would say it's definitely a major factor when it comes to video games, especially because for video games, obviously there's like a hype factor and people are hyped up, and especially for this game, people have been waiting for like 6 years for this game to come out, so obviously the hype is going to be really big, especially given the fact that Breath of the Wild was like this huge thing and it was really awesome and everybody loved it. Well, for the most part anyway. But point is, recency bias, yes, I understand that's a thing. And I understand, you might be caught up on the hype and you might just be enjoying yourself there, and maybe a lot of the people, because it's new, people are praising it a lot because a lot of people like it, and of course it got 10 out of 10s and things like that. But of course, the people who are complaining about it might have been complaining about it the entire time, and they were lost in the woodwork, but now they're finally coming out a little bit more prominent, a little bit more loud, especially considering that a lot of people finally beat the game, and they have a more experience with the game, and maybe they're a little bit more prominent in voicing their opinions about the negative stuff in particular. And I would say that did happen to me with Breath of the Wild. Of course, I still love that game as well. And I do remember not really thinking much about the quality of the dungeons and the negative aspects of that game until a few months after it had come out. So I guess in this sense, it sort of makes sense for Tears of the Kingdom. Next, the biggest thing about the story is, I didn't talk about this in the video. I did mention the fact that it still uses the same structure as Breath of the Wild with the memories. However, I didn't mention that in Breath of the Wild, and a lot of people mention this in the comments, Breath of the Wild, it worked better for that game because the memories were memories, and you could pick them up randomly and it didn't really matter which order. Of course, there is a canonical order in which the memories take place, but it matters less than it does in Tears of the Kingdom, because in Tears of the Kingdom there's a very specific order in which you're supposed to watch the memories, right? Because otherwise you might not exactly understand what's going on, because it literally is very obviously supposed to have a chronological order, whereas in Breath of the Wild you can watch them in any order and you'll be fine. But specifically with this order, and I understand there is, if you just follow the what is it called, the waypoint or whatever, the mission on the screen, on the select screen or whatever, if you just follow like the dot, it says like follow Impa and then go this way. If you follow that specific dot and the mission, it does take you to like a cave where it has all of the icons on the map in the order in which you're supposed to watch the cutscenes. However, from what I understand, you can go to those locations anyway and still watch them, even if you hadn't gone to follow Impa to see that cave and see the correct order in which they take place. So I think they probably could have done a better job of that, maybe because, and for instance, the final cutscene only shows up after you've watched them all. So maybe they could have just done it where only the first cutscene is available, and then the second one is available, and the third one available, and so on, instead of just having them all available at once. I think that probably would have been better in that respect, though I still agree that I think that memory system is stupid and they shouldn't have done it for this game. Obviously, in the context of the story, it kind of makes sense, but I wish the story would have taken place in modern times instead of, in the past, like Breath of the Wild. But anyway, point is, and another thing about the cutscenes is that all the sage cutscenes when you beat each dungeon are basically identical. It always has the sage like, I'm passing on my power to you, and here's what happened 10 billion years ago, or however long it takes place, and it's just the sage in like an empty room of like smoke or whatever, and then it shows like the same poses of all the sages in Rauru against Ganondorf every single time you beat a dungeon, and I do understand that is really annoying, especially considering that the cutscenes in Breath of the Wild were actually like different depending on where you went. So I guess I understand why that was disappointing. And in fact, when I played it, I was like, why are these all the same? This is lame. And I do get that, and I think that's a very valid point. Another thing that I did mention as well, but I guess I'll go a little bit more into depth in this video. The structure of the game is too similar to Breath of the Wild. I understand that they wanted to make it open world and go wherever you want, and they had already pretty much mastered that with Breath of the Wild. But Tears of the Kingdom, in my opinion, it's just too similar. The dungeons are all the same thing. It's still go and press the 5 buttons. That's annoying. Obviously the dungeons are more unique in this game, but if it's gonna be all the same like idea, just press the 5 buttons, that was kind of lame. I mean, the dungeons in general, I think, were themed better, and there was more enemies and stuff. But at the very least, Breath of the Wild had an excuse for them all to be the same, whereas Tears of the Kingdom doesn't. So I guess that's sort of a point in Breath of the Wild's favor. Additionally, all the shrines and stuff get too similar, I would say, overall. And I did mention this, that I kind of wish they had pieces of heart instead of just the shrines, like the Light of Blessing. I think that would have been better. Because then you wouldn't have to go into a room that looks identical every single time. You could have been like unique areas and stuff like that to get a piece of heart. But, that's how it goes. But anyway, one of the biggest things, and this wasn't just in the comments, I have seen it as well elsewhere in other videos and on Twitter and things like that. One of the biggest problems people had with Tears of the Kingdom, and I guess I completely forgot to mention this, it completely throws away the entire lore of the rest of the series. And that, I did understand that did bother me when it first came out, but I was specifically, I didn't really realize how much of a problem that would be with people, especially considering the fact that the Zelda timeline has split before. So I would say this is probably just another split. I understand that people, like, before Breath of the Wild, or when Breath of the Wild came out, before this Tears of the Kingdom came out, it was just basically all the way at the end of the timeline, right? And obviously Tears of the Kingdom's after that, but it retcons, like, the imprisoning war and Ganondorf and all this stuff, but I have a video, in the work. I'm cooking it up about the Zelda timeline, but little spoiler for that. Basically, I'm going to redo the entire timeline, just based on purely the content of the games, nothing about Hyrule Historia, nothing about developer interviews, because sometimes those are contradictory. And for Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, that's just a split timeline after Skyward Sword. I would say Skyward Sword is the beginning of all the games, but it just goes directly from Skyward Sword into Breath of the Wild, and that's just a completely separate timeline than the rest of it. But that's basically my idea about the Zelda lore here. That's my thoughts about it. But basically, yeah, those were the main problems I would say that people had in the comments of that video, or main problems with Tears of the Kingdom, and I do get that. And in fact, I did have a better experience playing Breath of the Wild than I did Tears of the Kingdom, but that's just how it goes, and hopefully the next game's better. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.